Hi everyone, thank you for having me. This is my first time in Japan. I'm living in Paris. Actually in Paris it is 3 a.m. and I'm really glad because I won't get any phishing calls from services. In France you can get calls during your lunchtime about for people proposing you, like asking you to maybe join some workshops paid by the government. And if you don't answer those calls, you will be called again and again and again. So you have actually to pick up those calls and say, don't call me again. So I won't get that calls, so I will be gladly present you a file provider. So my name is Audrey. I was introduced. I am working at Proton. And at Proton, we had two main applications. The first one was VPN and mail. Right now, we have three more, which are Proton Drive, Proton Pass, which actually supports passkey since this week, and the calendar. I'm working on the Drive team on the macOS application. Today, I'm going to present you File Provider, which allows you to integrate your cloud storage into the system on macOS or iOS. It is new with APFS, Apple File System, since iOS 11 and macOS 10.13. You can see it without spaces, like File Provider, same, or abbreviated as FP. You commonly see File Provider extension in other applications. You have the Drive, you have Google Drive, you have OneDrive, Microsoft, you have Dropbox. But you commonly see it also in Files application, which is integrated with the Drive application of Apple, which is called iCloud Drive. You can also use File Provider extension with other editing documents apps, like Pages or Microsoft, when you want to access files from all the cloud storages. So opening a file from your iCloud Drive to Microsoft, edit it, and save it to update in the cloud. There's also an example of this application called Documents by Riddle, made by people in Ukraine, where you can actually fully manage also the computer, so the files in different computers on this application. So not just what is on the drive, but also what is on the local files on other computers. The image you will see on your left is just the Files app, which integrates locations like Proton Drive or Google Drive or iCloud Drive. The second one, the one in the middle, you will see the next screen after clicking on Proton Drive, which is the integration of the File Provider of Proton Drive inside the Files app. And the next one, the one on your right, will be the Proton Drive app itself. The macOS version will be slightly different. It's like on iCloud Drive, it is within location like other iCloud Drive. iCloud Drive is separated because it's Apple, so it's in another level. But all those applications using the File Provider will be in the locations. So let me introduce you the File Provider. Right? Let's dig in. The File Provider extension, it's basically something which will mimic either your local copy and sync it in the file storage. And we'll have two different starting points we can choose. The first one will be the replicated File Provider. That will extend and sync the local copy of those files with the storage and replicates the contents of the disk. The second one will be the non-replicated files, which will just host and manage the user's local file. This is something we commonly see on macOS. To start implementing File Provider, we need a manager. Who doesn't need a manager? So the first one is the file provider manager. Inherits from NS object. So you have seen the previous presentation. We're still inheriting from NS object. So it will communicate with your app and the file provider extension. We need to have a subclass on that file provider extension. Naming is hard, so I just called it file provider extension and removing the prefix NS. To materialize the items, we're going to have to deal with NS file provider items. So a subclass conforming, a class conforming to the protocol NS file provider item. To enumerate everything we need inside our directory, we'll also need an enumerator. So same, a class that inherits from NS objects, which will enumerate items and all the changes we get from those items. Last, we can have a service. If we want to have specific communication, custom communication between the app and the extension through services to manage cross-process communication with the file provider, with the app itself, so the main target and the extension target, we can use the NS file provider service. It is an extension, so we have to add it at the beginning of the files. It is a separate target, so each target has its own container. We need to communicate through those targets via maybe a custom target, and which is shared between those two. But adding the domain, right? We will have the file provider domain, which needs to be added in the location finder. So in that finder, after adding the domain, we need to list all the items, so all our files and folder inside that domain: Proton Drive, Google Drive, Dropbox. Enumerating the item, we also need to either download them or upload them. So it's going to be about fetching and uploading contents. And lastly, we need to take care of the updates we get from the remote. So reporting all the items, updating via the remote changes. In each flow, you will see that the system calls your extension whenever it needs new data. So let's see it. First time, it's just about adding the extension. So we just need to initialize the file provider manager, and we will need to add the domain. The domain will be in the exact location in the Finder application. The system will expose that domain in the Finder sidebar, and it will create the root directory for the domain. At this point, there is no actual data, so everything is dataless. You haven't downloaded anything, so you don't see the contents, and you have to fetch it. But we'll get to there. After adding the domain, you will have to enumerate them. It's just going through the hierarchy of your directory. So every time you want to open a folder, it will fetch the content and will enumerate the items before getting the actual contents. The enumerate function is summarized like this. So what you get is those items who needs to be fetched. So you have to call your server, get all the items. But after you do that, or update your local database, after you do that, you will have to inform the observer, so the system, that you enumerate these items because it can be paginated. You can enumerate just a few of them. So you will have to inform, and you will have to finish the enumeration. In the change locally, you can see icons next to the files about how the state of each item. So item being processed, item being fetched, or item already fetched. If you want to download a file, you will have to call fetch content. So the extension will implement a fetch content function for everything that you want to download. So you will get the specified version of the file and will be able to view it, to open it. If you want to sync up, you can use the create item. Creating item is when you want to upload a new file or folder in your directory, but you can also try to move them or delete them completely. Just for a few tips, it's like modifying an item can also be moving it to the trash. So actually deleting the item is like removing the item from the trash, so permanent delete, or if you want to type rm -rf. So those are the steps and everything you need to know right now. We're going to go further with that. When you want to update the changes of everything that went on remote, you just need to enumerate them. Still doing a request, updating the local database, then enumerated, call the observer that you actually enumerated those items. So same thing that we did before when you were enumerating items and enumerating changes. The difference here is that we enumerate changes first, and then we enumerated the items again about updates from local server, from remote server, sorry. So let's do it step by step. It's first thing for every flow. Let's download a file. So when the kernel detects a read access to a data-less file, the system is paused while the extension is called to fetch those contents. The fetch content method is called. Typically, you implement a download. When the download completes, it will call the completion handler. We are dealing with completion handler every time. It's not async yet. So the contents of the file will be handed to the system, which will fill the formerly dataless file, and it will not invalidate the open file inspector. The system will then unpause the read access, and now the file is no longer dataless. It is downloaded. So subsequent reads of the file will not imply the file extension, the file provider extension anymore. If we want to go through the hierarchy of the file, we need to list the directory. It's about enumeration. So it is working similarly. The kernel will detect a read directory call and will pause it. It will call your extension to enumerate the items. You will fetch the metadata of these items. You reply with the number of items you get. The enumeration can be paginated. You can return less than the files you're expecting. You can have a folder with 25,000 files. Or you can return the full set of items. It will take longer. The system will pick up the enumeration from where it left off. Once all the pages have been enumerated, the system will allow the original call to go through if it was an original call. So like in the file case, once the directory has been enumerated, all the subsequent reads calls will use the contents from the disk and will not involve the extension. Propagating a remote changes from the server. There's a remote changes, so it can be sent via a push notification Or you can use a pooling system, fetching every X seconds, 15, 30, or 90. In response to that push notification or to this pooling mechanism, you will signal the system that there are changes that need to be enumerated from a special enumerator. You can have plenty of them. The trash enumerator, the working set enumerator, the root container enumerator. So if the system gives you the changes that have been different, like the different changes from the working set, you will have a continuation token, which is called the sync anchor. And it will be used to enumerate those new changes. So the token is defined by its extension. It keeps track of that sync anchor. And your enumerator will call enumerate changes function with that sync anchor. You will return the change item. So you will have a callback did update items. And once you've gone, you will give a new sync anchor for the next time around. So the system will asynchronously go and update every user visible file, only user visible files. Local changes, simpler. The system will detect the local changes that have changed, and we call a modify item if you want to modify or create or delete on the extension. You will pass the exact set of fields required for the changes. In response to that modify item call, you will update the item server side. If the contents of the file have changed, the system will hand you a clone of the change files, so you can upload a consistent version, even if the event of further changes of the same file. When you're done, you will call the completion handler, and it will update the version identifier of the item, and it will confirm the delivery of the change to the extension. What can happen? I can basically change some things locally and do the same exact thing on remote. So you can get conflicts. Your final state is back, and the system has a local state updated. So you will have to match the truth of the item in the cloud or in your local storage. You have to deal with all those conflicts. What can happen, for example, is conflicts on creation. There's an example as illustrated here where I actually trying to change the file remotely and locally. I'm creating the same folder, but the different content. So what I need to deal with is to find a way to manage these conflicts. What should I choose? Combine them, so merging, trying to split them. In that specific case, it is folder A and folder B will be in the same folder, will be combined in the same Yokohama folder. You can also have more complex conflict about the fact that you want to edit something locally and you completely delete his parent remotely. So every use case will have to be dealt by you and your logic. But there is other mechanism to deal with that. So we are good to go, right? What you can also do about the files is you can decorate them. You can decorate them with actions and menus. So what you will see on Dropbox, for example, is like context menus for for additional actions, and also checkboxes about the sync states of the item. You're good to go. You have implemented the file provider extension. You have managed conflicts. You can either download, upload, sync, update inside your domain. You can create your own server. So thank you for everything.